Hey guys, tonight we are going to travel back to a time when comfort was a luxury and warmth was a kind of miracle. You're going to wake up inside a medieval cottage, not as a knight or a noble, but as an ordinary peasant trying to survive a winter that feels like it has teeth. The fire has gone out. The air inside your home feels like it's biting at your skin. You can see your breath hanging in front of your face like a tiny ghost. And yes, you probably wouldn't survive this if you didn't know what you were doing. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now turn down the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soft background music, and let's begin tonight's journey together. You wake to the sound of the wind rattling the thatch above you. It's early morning, but there's no sun yet, just a dim grey light leaking through the cracks in your cottage walls. The world outside is a frozen sheet of white. You pull the rough wool blanket tighter around your shoulders, but it's thin, patched too many times to keep much warmth in. You're not alone. Someone's already stirring near the embers. A soft rustle, a cough. Maybe it's your mother or your oldest brother. The small fire that burned through the night has turned to faint red coals, barely alive, and someone's trying to coax it back to life. Every breath makes mist in the air. The room smells of smoke, damp straw and sheep. The hut itself is simple. Mud walls packed with straw, a low thatched roof, one door, no chimney. The smoke has to find its own way out, which means most of it stays inside, leaving the air hazy and the ceiling blackened with soot. Your eyes sting, but that's the cost of staying alive. Without that smoke, the warmth would vanish entirely. Your fingers feel stiff, and when you rub your hands together, it's like scraping bark. You look around. The dog's curled near the door, a warm shape in the cold. The chickens are quiet for now, probably still roosting on their perch. Outside, the frost creeps over everything like it's painting the world in glass. You pull on your tunic. It's itchy wool, not fancy stuff like a lord would wear, but it's thick enough. Your hose, wool again, go on next, tied with cords around your knees. There's no underwear yet, not the kind you think of. Just layers of linen, maybe two if you're lucky. You're dressing in the dark because every scrap of daylight is precious, and you'll need it later for work. Someone finally manages to get the fire going. The faint crackle feels like a victory. You move closer, hands out, and for a few seconds the cold eases, but it never really leaves. There's a kind of background chill that lives inside these cottages all winter long. You don't beat it, you just keep it from beating you. You step outside for a moment, and it hits you full in the face. The air smells clean, sharp, and cruel. Your breath fogs instantly, and you can taste the cold on your tongue. The ground crunches underfoot. The sky is a dull white dome. There's no sound but the wind and maybe a crow. You head toward the byre where the animals are kept. It's warmer in there, strangely enough. Warm because life itself makes heat. The cow's breath steams the air. Their bodies radiate a slow, living warmth that seeps into the space. Sometimes, peasants even slept near their livestock on the coldest nights. Not out of affection, but necessity. Historians still debate whether winter was harsher back then, or whether people just remembered it that way. Climate records show that Europe went through something called the Little Ice Age, starting in the 14th century, when winters really did grow colder and longer. But even before that, the lack of insulation, limited fuel, and constant drafts made surviving any winter an act of endurance. You pick up a wooden bucket, the handle rough against your palm, and head for the well. The water's frozen over on top, so you have to break the ice first. An unpleasant little ritual that everyone in your village knows too well. The shock of cold water splashing on your wrist makes you gasp. You mutter something unholy under your breath, and for a second you almost laugh. That's the thing about winter. It humbles everyone, and sometimes all you can do is curse and keep moving. Back inside, the others are gathered around the fire. Someone's brought in yesterday's bread. Hard as stone, but still edible if you dip it in hot broth. The youngest is shivering in a corner, wrapped in a blanket so worn it looks more whole than cloth. You hand them a bit of bread, and they smile, teeth chattering. One thing about peasant life, everyone depends on everyone else. You share warmth, food, work, and complaints. There's no such thing as being entirely alone, too cold for that, too dangerous. Even gossip serves as insulation in a way. Outside, the day is creeping forward, pale and tired. You can see the smoke from other cottages drifting up through the air. Thin grey lines that mark each family's fight against the cold. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rings from the manor or the church. Time to start the day's labour, whatever that means in this frozen season. Maybe mending tools, maybe tending animals, maybe chopping the little wood you have left. You take one last deep breath of smoky air, feeling it sting your lungs, and you think, this is winter and this is life. You don't complain because there's no one to complain to. You just keep moving, keep breathing, keep waiting for the faint promise of spring. And somewhere deep inside, under all that cold and hardship, you realise that warmth is more than just heat. It's the sound of people waking together, the smell of smoke in the rafters, the tiny glowing fire that you refuse to let die. You pull your cloak tighter as you step out into the morning, and it's not exactly stylish. It's thick, heavy, and smells faintly of sheep. But in this world, that's the smell of survival. Every thread of it matters. This is the season when clothes stop being fashion and start being armour. You tug your hood forward, covering your ears, and you can feel the rough texture of wool scraping against your cheek. It's itchy, but you don't care. The wind is worse. Around you, the village looks like something out of a frostbitten painting. Grey smoke rising from squat houses, frozen mud paths, and people wrapped up like walking bundles of cloth. Layers! That's the trick. You wear them all, like your life depends on it, because, well, it kind of does. You start with your linen shirt, maybe two if your family's not too poor. Over that comes your tunic, thick wool dyed in faded browns or greens, because bright colours are for the rich. Then the hose, one leg at a time, tied with cords. A belt to hold it all together, because medieval tailoring is more make it fit somehow than custom cut. And finally, your cloak. Your portable house, your shield against the weather. You can almost hear your mother's voice in your head, scolding, "Don't waste the warmth. Don't open the door too long." Because warmth isn't a given, it's earned, hoarded, and lost faster than you can say January. You step over a puddle of half-frozen slush and glance down at your boots. Not exactly comfortable. They're made of thick leather, sometimes stuffed with straw for insulation. Socks, if you're lucky, are rough wool tubes that scratch like mad but keep your toes attached. There's no Gore-Tex, no fleece, just layers of what the sheep gave you. Historians still debate whether peasants owned enough clothing to layer properly, or if they simply wore the same few garments year-round until they fell apart. Archaeological finds suggest that most had at least one set of winter clothes, patched, re-dyed, handed down for years. Clothes were wealth. Sometimes people were buried in rags, because their better garments had to be reused by the living. You walk past a neighbour's cottage, and you see them shaking out a sheepskin by the door. The wool looks thick and matted, but it's gold to them. Wool is everything. It's water-resistant, warm even when damp, and easy to repair. England, especially, built an entire medieval economy on wool. Kings taxed it, monasteries sold it, peasants raised sheep for it. You could say that the whole country stayed warm on the backs of sheep, literally. You glance over at your own sleeve, the fibres rough but strong. You remember helping shear the sheep last summer? Your hands raw from gripping the shears. You didn't know then that every lock of wool would come back to save your skin in winter. Your little sister tugs at your cloak, giggling. Her cheeks are pink from the cold, her hair messy under a hood that's more patch than cloth. She's wearing an oversized tunic that once belonged to your cousin, tied up with a bit of rope around her waist. Too big is better than too thin. You lift her onto your hip and she presses her nose into your neck. It's cold, but she smells of smoke and straw, which somehow feels like home. The village tailor, or more accurately the woman who knows how to sew better than anyone else, is outside too, hanging strips of dyed wool on a line. They freeze almost immediately, stiff like boards. She laughs, shaking her head. "Can't dry nothing this time of year," she mutters. "Might as well hang it straight on the sheep." That earns her a grin. Humour is another kind of insulation around here. There's something oddly beautiful about all these layers of wool, linen, fur and skin. They tell a story about resourcefulness. You start realising that medieval fashion wasn't primitive. It was practical art. Every scrap mattered. Even the offcuts from a tunic might become mittens or a patch for a hole. And when something was too far gone to fix, it might be boiled down into felt, which made great insoles for boots. Nothing wasted, nothing new. You pass by a small pile of pelts drying by a doorway. Rabbit, maybe fox if someone was lucky enough to trap one. Fur was the luxury version of warmth for peasants. Rare, but worth every effort. You touch one of the skins soft under your fingers and imagine it's sewn into a lining for your cloak. For a brief second you feel almost rich. Historians still debate how widespread fur use was among commoners. Some claim it was rare and strictly reserved for the wealthy. Others point to rural inventories listing squirrel, rabbit and even cat skins used in humble clothing. Yes, cat fur. Don't look at whiskers that way. It was survival. As the sun rises higher, though higher is generous, it barely clears the trees this time of year. You see villagers heading toward the woods. They carry axes, ropes, baskets, firewood duty. You're joining them soon, and you're already thinking about how cold the axe handle will feel in your hands. But before you go, you stop by the fire one last time. Someone's boiling water for broth, steam curling lazily into the air. You extend your hands toward the flames, feeling the wool on your sleeves grow warm. For a few precious moments, you're almost comfortable. You look around and notice how everyone's clothes are smoking slightly where the heat hits them, each person surrounded by their own little cloud of steam. It's like the whole village is exhaling together. You laugh quietly. "We're all just walking kettles," you murmur, and your mother gives you a half smile. There's a strange sense of pride in these shabby layers. Every stitch tells you that someone cared enough to keep you alive. Someone's hands mended that sleeve, patched that hole, spun that yarn. Your warmth isn't yours alone. It's borrowed from sheep, from labour, from the patience of hands that never stop working. As you lift the axe later and feel the icy wood bite your palms, you realise that surviving winter is an act of art as much as endurance. It's about knowing the worth of every fibre, every layer, every flicker of firelight. And when you glance down at your patched cloak again, you can't help but think, it may not look like much, but it's your shield against the cold world, and somehow that makes it beautiful. The fire is the heart of everything. Without it, your cottage isn't a home. It's just a cold box with a roof that leaks when it snows. You can handle hunger, you can handle blisters, you can even handle the occasional angry goose. But losing your fire, that's a disaster. You'd rather face a wolf. You crouch down beside the hearth, watching the flames curl around the half-burned logs. It's mesmerising. The fire crackles, spits, sighs, a tiny living creature demanding constant attention. You reach for a stick and poke at the embers, stirring them like soup, coaxing more life from the glow. Smoke fills your nose instantly, making you cough, but you don't move. This is the warmest spot in the room. The hearth isn't fancy, just a shallow pit in the packed earth, lined with stones to keep the flames from eating through the floor. No chimney, no flue, just a hole in the roof where the smoke eventually finds its way out, after filling the cottage first. Every meal, every story, every long night of winter happens here. You sit back on your heels and look around. The rafters above are black with soot, thick and glossy from years of smoke curling up through them. You wonder how long they've been like that. Probably before you were born. Maybe before your parents were too. The smell clings to everything. The walls, your hair, your clothes. You don't notice it anymore. Someone says that breathing in smoke all winter can make your eyes sting and your lungs ache. But what's the alternative? Freezing to death quietly in a fresh air cottage? No thanks. You'll take the smoke and the warmth and count it a fair trade. You remember last year when your neighbour's thatch caught fire? One spark, one gust of wind, and the whole roof went up like a torch. Everyone in the village rushed to help, throwing buckets of muddy water and snow until the flames died. The family spent the rest of the winter in someone else's cottage, huddled like sardines. That's the cruel joke of the hearth. It gives life, and it can take it just as easily. You glance toward the corner of the room where a pot hangs over the fire on an iron hook. It's bubbling quietly, filling the air with the smell of onions and cabbage. It's not exactly a feast, but it's hot, and that's half the battle. The hearth isn't just for warmth, it's the stove, the light, and sometimes the only clock that matters. When the fire burns low, it's bedtime. When it flares up, morning's not far off. Historians still debate how common chimneys were in peasant homes during the Middle Ages. Some argue they didn't become widespread until the 14th or 15th century. Before that, the open hearth was standard. Smoke everywhere, fire in the centre of the floor. Archaeological remains even show that families sometimes dug a shallow pit in the middle of their house to hold embers through the night, covering it with ash to keep it alive until morning. Early central heating, medieval style. You lean closer to the fire and notice how the walls near it are warm to the touch. Mud and wattle might not sound impressive, but they hold heat surprisingly well. You can see where the plaster's cracked, little lines like a map of your winters. You run your finger along one and think, maybe this house is just as tired as I am. A cat slinks by your ankle, tail flicking lazily. You didn't even know where it came from, it just appeared, drawn by the warmth. Cats know things, especially where comfort hides. It curls up near the fire, purring so loudly you can feel it through the floor. For a moment, it's easy to forget how cold the world outside is. Your father sits nearby, sharpening a blade, sparks briefly joining the dance of firelight. Fire's like a child, he says. You feed it, you watch it, you never trust it. You grin. He's said that 1,000 times, but somehow it always feels like wisdom. Later, as the wind howls outside, everyone gathers closer. Your mother hums softly, a tune older than memory. Someone tells a story. Maybe about a knight who stole fire from a dragon's hoard, or a saint who walked barefoot through snow and didn't feel the cold. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the sound of voices, the flicker of light, the feeling that for this moment winter can't touch you. You stretch your hands toward the flames again, and you realise how much of your life revolves around this small circle of warmth. You were born by it, fed by it, healed beside it. You'll probably die within sight of it someday. It's your sun, your hearth, your god in miniature. Every once in a while the fire hisses. Maybe some snow fell through the roof, or a damp log found its way in. You flinch, then laugh softly. The sound echoes off the walls. Someone teases you for being jumpy, and you throw back a line about the fire testing your bravery. 3 seconds later it pops again, louder, and everyone bursts out laughing. That's one thing the cold can't take, your sense of humour. Outside you can see a faint red glow in the distance. Another cottage's fire burning through the frost. It's comforting to know you're not the only ones awake in the dark, keeping the ancient flame alive. All across the village, families are tending fires just like yours, hands outstretched, faces orange in the glow. It's like a constellation of warmth, flickering against the night. The fire crackles again, steady and sure, and you breathe a little easier. The storm can rage all it wants outside. You've got your own sun right here, trapped in a circle of stones, and as you drift towards sleep later that night, lying close to the hearth, the last thing you see before your eyes close is that red-gold shimmer of coals. You know it'll still be there in the morning, waiting, breathing alive. You wake in the half-dark, the kind of dim light that never really feels like morning. The first thing you feel is the cold. It crawls up your legs, sneaks into your sleeves, and settles behind your neck like a particularly mean ghost. You groan, pull the blanket over your head, and hope for a second that winter might have decided to take a day off. It hasn't. You peek out and see your breath fogging the air. The fire's gone low again, just faint embers gnash. You can smell damp straw, smoke, and the faint sour scent of wool that's been slept in too many nights in a row. That's the perfume of survival. You're not sleeping alone, of course. Nobody does. The idea of everyone having their own bed is centuries away. Right now you're wedged between your brother, who kicks like he's fighting invisible dragons, and your grandmother, who snores with alarming commitment. There's no such thing as personal space in this cottage. Only shared body heat and the hope no one ate too many beans for supper. You shift slightly, the straw mattress crunching beneath you. It's not exactly soft. It pokes and rustles like you're sleeping inside a scarecrow. But it's better than the ground. Beneath the straw are wooden planks, and beneath that the frozen earth. Sometimes you wake up feeling like you've fused with the floor. Historians still debate how common beds were among peasants. Some say families slept on wooden frames with straw-stuffed mattresses. Others argue most just lay on piles of rushes or sacks filled with hay. Either way, comfort wasn't really part of the design. The main goal was insulation, keeping your body off the cold ground and your heat in one place. You glance across the room and see your parents still asleep under a heavy wool blanket, a patchwork of different weaves and colours. Blankets are precious. Most people own only one or two, often shared between the whole family. You pull yours closer and tuck it under your chin. At the far end of the cottage you can hear the slow shifting of animals. Yes, animals, because they are in here with you. A couple of goats, maybe a cow if you're lucky. Their bodies give off warmth, and their breath fills the air with a kind of living fog. You can almost taste it. Some nights you swear the goat is warmer than your brother. It's strange how quickly you stop noticing the smell. The mix of hay, dung, sweat, smoke. It's overwhelming at first, but after a few weeks it just smells like winter. You reach out and touch the wooden beam beside your sleeping spot. It's cool and smooth, faintly damp. In some places, frost crystals have formed on the inside of the walls, glittering faintly in the firelight. You blow on them gently and watch them melt. It's like being inside a snow globe, beautiful and miserable at the same time. Someone stirs. Your mother's awake now, rubbing her arms briskly. "Up," she says softly. Not because she wants to wake everyone, but because the morning isn't going to wait. You groan, drag yourself upright, and your blanket falls away. Instantly the cold grabs hold of your skin again. It's like being dunked in icy water. You look around at the sleeping forms and think about how weirdly close everyone has to be in winter. Privacy's a summer luxury. In the cold months it's all about proximity. Human heating systems, medieval edition, and it works. Historians note that in Northern Europe, families and servants often slept together in one large room. It wasn't improper, it was practical. When there's frost on your pillow and ice on your boots, you stop worrying about modesty and start caring about survival. You help your mother stoke the fire back to life. She adds a few twigs, blows gently, then places a thicker log on top. It smokes, hisses, then catches. Light spills across the room, flickering over faces, over the wooden beams, over the faint shapes of animals breathing in the dark. As everyone wakes, there's a small ritual of shivering, muttering, stretching and scratching. Your brother complains about the draft. Your grandmother grumbles that it was colder in her day, which you doubt but no one dares argue. The youngest one curls against the wall, refusing to leave the straw pile until someone threatens to pour water on him. There's a strange comfort in it, though. The rhythm of family waking together, the sound of crackling fire, the shared misery that somehow becomes a shared joke. Someone sneezes loudly, and your father mutters, "That'll be another soul for Sam Blaze," and everyone laughs. The sound fills the cottage, bouncing off the smoke-dark rafters. You pull on your boots and step outside for a moment. The air slaps you in the face. Frost crunches underfoot. The sunrise paints everything pink and gold, and your breath hangs in the still air like a tiny ghost. From here, you can see smoke rising from other cottages, little spirals of life in the frozen dawn. Inside, your mother's making something warm to drink. Thin ale, probably. It's not exactly Starbucks, but it's liquid and not frozen, so you'll take it. She ladles it into a wooden cup, and the warmth seeps through to your hands. You sip it slowly, savouring every drop. You look around the room again and realise that for all its discomfort, this space is alive. The animals shifting, the fire crackling, the faint hum of voices. It's a small, noisy miracle. You lie back down for just a second, feeling the scratch of straw under you, the faint warmth of others beside you, and you think, maybe this isn't so bad. Maybe this is what survival really feels like. Messy, crowded, smelly, but alive. Then your brother elbows you in the ribs, and the moment passes. You snore like a dying ox, he says, grinning. You throw a bit of straw at him, and for a brief moment the cottage feels lighter, brighter. Outside the frost is waiting, but inside, just for now, you're warm enough. You're out by the wall now, staring at it with mild disbelief. It's made of dung, not just any dung, cow dung mixed with straw and mud, packed tight between wooden beams. The walls are smooth and dry now, but you know what went into them. You helped spread it yourself when you were younger. You didn't love the job then, and you definitely don't now. Still, when the winter wind howls and every cottage in the village creaks like an old ship, that wall keeps you alive, so you pat it once affectionately. "You stink, but you save us," you mutter. That's the thing about medieval life. It's all about compromise. Comfort's a luxury, survival's an art form, and sometimes that art involves, well, manure. Historians still debate how widely dung was used in medieval construction. Some claim it was a common insulator in peasant homes, mixed into daub to fill the gaps between wattle frames. Others argue that dung was mostly for fuel, dried into cakes for burning. Either way, it's safe to say that cow waste was the unsung hero of winter warmth. Not exactly glamorous, but surprisingly effective. You glance over at the corner of the house where new patches of daub are drying, a mix of mud, straw, maybe some animal hair, and yes, a little dung for good measure. It looks solid, earthy, like something born from the ground itself. You can see where last year's frost cracked the plaster, and someone's patched it up again. The wall's never perfect, just perpetually repaired. You remember helping smear it on as a child. Your mother laughed as you wrinkled your nose. "Don't look so proud," she said. "That muck keeps you warmer than your fancy tunic." She wasn't wrong. You step back and breathe in the faint earthy scent. It's not unpleasant, like wet soil after rain with a hint of smoke. The whole cottage smells like this, alive, used, honest. Firewood's scarce this year. It always is. The forest near the manor belongs to the lord, and taking too much from it can earn you a fine, or worse. So you make do. Cow dung, when dried, burns slowly and hot. It doesn't spark like wood, but it smells, well, let's call it distinctive. You get used to it, though. You can get used to almost anything when it's the only thing standing between you and frostbite. You walk around to the back of the cottage, where round, flat dung cakes are laid out in neat rows to dry. They look almost like loaves of bread, if bread had the terrible sense of humour. The sun's weak, but it's enough to harden them over time. Later they'll be stacked by the hearth, ready to burn. Someone in the village once joked, "When you can't eat what comes out of the cow, burn it." You remember laughing, then realising it wasn't really a joke. Your father joins you, carrying a wooden rake. Don't just stand there admiring the art, he says. Help me turn them. You groan, but you help anyway. The cakes are surprisingly light, dry and brittle at the edges. The cold bites your fingers, and you rub them together, watching your breath rise in little clouds. As you work, you look out toward the fields. Everything's bare and grey. The stubble of last season's harvest pokes through the snow like old bones. You can almost imagine the land holding its breath, waiting for the thaw. When you finish, your father stands back, inspecting the line of drying cakes. Perfect, he says. Almost makes you proud, doesn't it? You glance at him, deadpan. Of our poop collection? He chuckles. You'll thank it when you're warm tonight. Fair point. Inside, your mother's adding another patch to the inner wall, filling a gap where the cold sneaks in. She smooths the mixture with her hands, humming softly. Her palms are cracked and red from the cold, but she moves like someone who's done this 1,000 times. You watch her for a moment, the way she presses the daub into every crevice, sealing out the wind with something she built herself. It's oddly beautiful, in a gritty, earthy sort of way. Historians still debate whether peasants intentionally used dung for warmth or if it was just a convenient material. But what's clear is that nothing was wasted. Every part of the farm's rhythm, the animals, the crops, the people, fed into survival. The cows ate grass, gave milk, and when the time came, they gave you warmth in a very different form. You crouch near the hearth as your mother tosses a dried dung cake onto the fire. It flares up with a low, steady burn, releasing a faint, acrid smell. You wrinkle your nose. She catches the look and smirks. Better than freezing, isn't it? You nod. Barely. The fire glows brighter, the walls hold in the heat, and soon the room feels, well, not warm exactly, but tolerable. You can move your fingers again, which counts as victory. Later, as you sit near the fire, your father tells a story about a winter so cold the beer froze solid in the cask. We had to eat it with spoons, he says. You laugh, imagining spoonfuls of icy ale like medieval ice cream. Did it taste any good? He shrugs. Didn't matter, it wasn't water. That's another truth about winter. It makes you creative. Whether it's dung fires, patched walls, or frozen beer feasts, every act of warmth is a small rebellion against the cold. You lean back, feeling the faint warmth against your back, and listen to the fire hum. The smell of smoke and earth fills the air. The walls, the dung, the fire, they all work together, holding off the frost like a tired army that refuses to retreat. You grin to yourself. Maybe it's not the prettiest way to survive, but it's clever. You've turned waste into heat, filth into comfort, and that feels a little bit like magic. The kind that smells bad but still counts. Your feet hurt. They always do this time of year. You stamp them against the frozen ground, trying to get some feeling back into your toes, but all you get is a dull, painful tingle that feels somewhere between pins and betrayal. The frost has crept right through your boots again. You look down at them, cracked leather, stiff from the cold, seams patched with whatever twine was handy last summer. Inside, they're stuffed with straw, not because it's comfortable, but because it's the only insulation you've got. You bend down, pull a piece out, and grin. You're supposed to walk on straw, not in it, you mutter. Then again, the straw might be smarter than you. It gets to stay warm inside the boot. The earth underfoot is hard as stone. In summer, it's soft mud that clings to everything. In winter, it freezes into jagged ridges that bite through your soles. You step back into the cottage and the change is instant. The air's warmer, softer, and smells faintly of smoke and earth. The fire's alive again, and the light flickers over the floor like liquid gold. The floor itself isn't made of wood like in the Lord's Hall. It's beaten earth. Dark, compacted, and surprisingly sturdy. Your family sprinkles fresh rushes and straw across it to keep it clean and dry, though clean is a generous word. The rushes mix with crumbs, bits of ash, and the occasional lost spoon. Every few weeks they're swept out and replaced with new ones. Historians still debate whether medieval peasants actually used rushes year-round or only in the cold months. What's certain is that floors weren't bare earth for long. People quickly learned that a layer of plant matter made walking barefoot a little less miserable. And accidentally, it added insulation. Nature's carpet. You crouch down, brushing your hand across the rushes. They make a soft whispering sound. Summer from summer. Green and sweet smelling when first laid down, now dry and brittle. You imagine they're a memory of warmth. Tiny ghosts of summer days hiding under your feet. When your grandmother sees you fussing with them, she chuckles. Keep that up and you'll be sweeping till Candlemas, she says. You grin back. At least it's warmer than chopping wood. You grab the broom anyway. Really just a bundle of twigs tied with twine, and sweep near the hearth. Dust rises, glowing in the firelight like tiny snowflakes. You sneeze, then laugh. half from the sound, half from the absurdity of cleaning something made entirely of dirt. You've heard stories of the great stone floors in castles, polished smooth, covered with woven tapestries or even carpets. You can't imagine it. Why would anyone want stone beneath them? The earth is softer, more forgiving. It gives back a little heat if you treat it kindly. As you sweep, you notice the cats again, stretched out near the fire, bellies up, perfectly content. You envy them. They always find the warmest spot first. You stretch out your hands to the fire, trying to copy their posture, but the ground's too cold. The cats are smug about it, you swear. Later, you take a bucket and step outside. The cold hits like a slap. The path is slick with ice and your boots slide a little. You crouch to scoop some snow into the bucket. It'll melt for water later. It squeaks under your fingers, clean and bright. Behind you, smoke curls from the thatch, the only sign of life in a frozen world. When you go back inside, your mother's unrolling something new, woven mats made of reeds. They're for the sleeping area, she says, to keep the straw dry. You help her lay them down, pressing your palms flat to smooth them. The reeds make a faint cracking sound. The mats feel like the closest thing to luxury your family owns. Historians still debate whether reed mats were common among the lower peasantry or only used by slightly wealthier villagers. Excavations have found fragments of woven reeds, suggesting that even modest homes had their own versions of comfort. Simple, natural, but clever. When night comes, you lie down again on your straw bed. The rushes and mats beneath you give off a faint, sweet scent like dry grass in the sun. It's oddly comforting. You curl up tight, knees to your chest, and listen to the sounds of the house. The faint hiss of fire, the steady breathing of family, the soft grunt of a cow shifting in its stall beyond the wall. Your father mutters something about the frost getting thicker by morning. Your grandmother mumbles that it's nothing compared to the great winter of 79 when your soup froze before your spoon hit it. You're not sure you believe her, but the image makes you smile. You think about the earth under you, the same ground you walked, worked and slept on. It's cold now, but it's steady, ancient and patient. In spring it'll warm again, and you'll plant seeds in it. For now, it's holding you up, quite literally, through another long winter night. You close your eyes. The straw crackles as you shift. You think of the summer grass that grew where your bed now lies, of bare feet running through the fields, of warmth so strong you once wished for shade. You smile at the memory, even as your breath fogs the air. You murmur softly to yourself, "We'll make it through." The ground always wakes up again. The fire pops, sending a tiny ember dancing into the air, and for a heartbeat, it's like the earth itself just nodded in agreement. The sun's already sinking low when you finally hear it. Music, laughter, and the low rumble of voices carried on the wind. You pause mid-step, the bundle of sticks still in your arms, and tilt your head toward the sound. The ale house. Your father catches your eye and grins. "We've earned a pint, haven't we?" he says, even though "we" usually means him. You grin back. In winter, the ale house isn't just for drinking. It's where warmth and company replace what the sun can't give. You drop the sticks by the door, brush snow from your boots, and follow the trail of lanterns through the twilight. The air is sharp, cold enough to sting, but every few steps the faint warmth of laughter keeps you going. When you push open the door, it's like stepping into another world. Heat hits you first, thick, smoky, alive. Then comes the smell. Ale, roasted onions, sweat and wood smoke, all mingled into a scent that's unmistakably human. The room's small, crowded, and loud. A single hearth blazes in the corner, its flames licking up the blackened stones. People cluster near it like moths. Farmhands, shepherds, a few women, even the village priest pretending he's only there to bless the company. "Sure, father." You slip into the room, and your senses flood with life. Someone's playing a fiddle near the wall, badly but enthusiastically. A couple of boys stomp in rhythm on the wooden boards. You feel the vibration through your feet, up your legs. It's warmth in another form. Movement, sound, laughter. "Over here!" your friend Tom calls, waving a mug so full it sloshes onto his sleeve. You make your way through the crowd, squeezing between shoulders, getting an elbow in the ribs, and nearly tripping over someone's dog. You finally reach him. He shoves the mug toward you. "Drink. It'll warm you faster than the fire." You take a cautious sip. The ale's thick, cloudy, and surprisingly warm. It's been sitting by the hearth. It burns a little going down, but in a good way. You can almost feel your insides sigh with relief. Historians still debate just how strong medieval ale really was. Most agree that small ale, the kind peasants drank daily, had very little alcohol, just enough to purify the water and give a mild buzz. But ale houses sometimes brewed richer, stronger batches for special occasions, and in winter, Anything that made your blood feel a little warmer was worth the price. You take another drink. It's bitter, sweet, earthy, all at once. You set the mug down and rub your hands near the fire, watching sparks leap into the air. Someone nearby starts a song, something about St. Bridget and her miraculous cloak. Soon half the room joins in, their voices rising and falling with the tune. You don't know all the words, but you hum along. The fiddle squeaks, someone claps off beat. A man in the corner tries to harmonise and fails spectacularly. Everyone laughs. It feels human. You glance around and notice how everyone's layered in the same rough wool and patched cloaks you wear. But somehow, in the glow of firelight, it all looks warmer, softer, almost golden. For once, no one looks cold. You spot the blacksmith. Huge, soot-faced, arms like tree trunks, telling a story about the time his forge was so hot it melted the soles off his boots. That's one way to stay warm, someone jokes, and the whole table erupts in laughter. You find yourself laughing too, even though your face hurts from smiling. The sound of it echoes through the room, a wave of heat that has nothing to do with fire. Historians note that medieval alehouses were more than taverns. They were community centres. In winter especially, they became the heart of village life. Part gossip hall, part dance floor, part therapy session. You could barter news, find work, sing songs, or just thaw your fingers. For a few hours, the cold world outside didn't exist. You lean back against the wall, feeling the heat on your face. Tom nudges you. You hear they're brewing spiced ale for Candlemas? You raise an eyebrow. Spiced? We don't even have spices, he shrugs. The Reeves' wife swears she's got cinnamon. You both laugh, imagining it. Someone shouts for another round. The innkeeper, a sturdy woman with arms strong enough to wrestle a cow, pours from a barrel with practiced precision. Don't spill it, she warns. Every drop's worth a prayer. You sip slowly now, the warmth sinking deep. Your eyes wander to the fire again. The flames dance in patterns that almost look alive, like they're listening too. It's easy to forget, just for a moment, the cold waiting outside, the frost, the hunger, the aching feet. Inside, you're just another villager among voices and laughter. Later, someone brings out a loaf of bread and a wedge of cheese. Everyone tears off a piece, passing it around like a sacred rite. You chew slowly, savouring it, the bread dense, the cheese sharp and salty. You can feel the energy returning to your limbs. You tell a story of your own, about the time your goat escaped in the snow and wandered straight into the churchyard. Guess he was looking for absolution, you say. The room bursts into laughter. You're proud of that one. When the night wears thin, the song's slow. Someone stokes the fire one last time, and the air fills with the smell of burning oak. You can hear the wind howling outside, scratching at the door, jealous. But it can't get in. Not tonight. You pull your cloak around you, nodding to Tom. Same time tomorrow, you say. He grins. If the ale holds out. As you step back into the cold, the world feels sharper, emptier. But you carry the warmth of that room inside you. The laughter still rings in your ears. You glance back once, seeing the firelight flicker through the cracks of the alehouse door. It's like a beacon. And as you walk home through the snow, you realise that sometimes the best way to fight the cold isn't with fire or wool, it's with company. By morning, the warmth from the alehouse has faded from your bones. The air bites harder now, sharp and mean, the kind of cold that makes your teeth ache when you breathe too deep. You pull your cloak tight and step outside. The world's still frozen, but something smells good. It's not fire, it's food. Back inside, your mother's stirring a great iron pot, and the smell that fills the cottage could bring a knight to his knees. Onion, barley, maybe a scrap of salted pork if luck's on your side. The steam rolls up like a warm ghost curling through the smoky air. Don't just stand there, she says, ladle in hand. Fetch the turnips. You grab the basket, stomp your boots to knock off the frost, and step back into the cold. The turnips are stored in a pit behind the cottage, buried under straw and earth to keep from freezing. You dig through the pile, your fingers going numb until you find a few good ones. Their skin's rough and dirt-caked, but that's flavour in disguise. You haul them inside, and she takes them without a word, dropping them straight into the pot. They hit the broth with a soft plop, followed by a hiss of rising steam. You lean closer, letting it wash over your face. For a moment, you swear the warmth is enough to melt the frost off your soul. The smell gets richer as the morning goes on. Earthy, savoury, comforting. Food is more than survival in winter. It's hope in a bowl. Historians still debate how much meat peasants really ate. Some records suggest it was rare, a treat for holy days or feasts. Most of the time, meals were built around grains, legumes and root vegetables. Barley, oats, peas, onions, cabbage, leeks, and of course turnips. Simple but filling, and hot. You reach for a wooden spoon and taste the broth. It's thick, heavy, and a little smoky. Perfect. Needs salt, your father says automatically, though he knows full well you haven't had any in weeks. You roll your eyes. Maybe next Christmas. Your mother hands you a small round loaf of bread baked last night near the hearth. The crust is dark and hard, but when you tear it open, it's warm and soft inside. You dip it into the pot, soak up the broth, and take a bite. The flavour hits like a miracle. This isn't fine dining, it's fuel, the kind that burns slow and steady. It fills your belly, spreads warmth through your limbs. You sigh, eyes half closed, pretending you're not already thinking about the next meal. There's laughter outside, and when you peek through the doorway, you see your neighbours gathered around a barrel sharing mugs of steaming cider. The smell of apples drifts across the air, sweet and spiced. "Come on," someone shouts, "we're not letting the frost win today." You head over, curiosity leading the way. The cider's hot, laced with honey and maybe, just maybe, a pinch of something exotic. Cinnamon, perhaps? The Reeves' wife wasn't lying after all. You take a sip and nearly melt on the spot. "That's witchcraft," you mutter, and the man beside you grins. "No, just apples and patience. Hot cider's not the only trick up your sleeve this season. There's ale stew, roasted onions, barley pottage thick enough to stand a spoon in, and on rare lucky days, roasted meat." You remember last winter, when someone in the village caught a wild hare. Half the village came running. It was roasted on spits over the fire, basted with herbs, and shared among everyone. You barely got a mouthful, but it tasted like glory. Historians still debate whether spices like pepper or cinnamon ever reached peasant kitchens. Some argue that scraps of spice, leftovers from noble kitchens or church feasts, occasionally trickled down. Others insist peasants used only local herbs: sage, parsley, garlic, thyme. Either way, food was flavoured with whatever the land offered, and in winter, that meant creativity. You sit by the fire again that evening, your belly full, listening to the wind scrape against the door. Your grandmother's telling a story about how long ago St. Martin kept a goose in his hut for warmth and refused to eat it even when he was starving. The goose was his friend, she says. Your brother interrupts. Bet it was also his blanket. Everyone laughs. The laughter fades into comfortable silence. The pot hangs over the embers again, simmering low, ready for tomorrow. You stare into it, hypnotised by the faint bubbles rising through the surface. It's not just food, it's a promise that you'll make it through another day. You think about all the little tricks people use to keep warm through their meals. Bread baked near the hearth so it steams when you break it open. Ale warmed over the fire so it feels like liquid courage. Hot stones dropped into soup bowls to keep them warm longer. And of course, endless layers of pottage. Breakfast, lunch and dinner, all from the same bubbling cauldron. Your mother used to joke that medieval cooking was just boil it longer and call it new. You laugh at the memory. She's not wrong, but there's comfort in it. The pot never empties completely, it just evolves. Every day a little more water, a few more scraps, a new flavour born from the old. As night falls, you can feel the warmth from your meal settling deep in your body. Outside, frost blooms across the windows. The wind howls again, demanding entry, but it's too late. You've built your barricade in your belly, one steaming bowl at a time. You stretch out by the fire, content. "Tomorrow," your father says quietly, "we'll make something special." You raise an eyebrow. "Special?" he grins. "Boil the turnips twice." You groan and everyone bursts out laughing. Still, as the laughter fades and sleep creeps in, you know he's right. Food isn't just fuel, it's fire you can eat. And on nights like this, that's the best kind of magic there is. The world outside is wrapped in frost, the kind that silences everything. The trees bow under the weight of snow, and the air feels too thick to breathe. But tonight the church bell rings through the cold like a promise. You pull your cloak around your shoulders and start toward the sound. The ground crunches beneath your boots, each step sending up tiny crystals that glitter in the moonlight. The sky is a deep navy blue, clear and cold, with stars that look close enough to touch. It's one of those nights where the dark feels alive. When you reach the church, the door creaks open and a wave of warmth greets you. Not from heat, but from candles. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Their glow spills over the wooden pews, dances across the stone walls, and paints every face with gold. The smell of wax and pine fills the air. Everyone from the village is here. Men, women, children, all bundled in wool and fur, eyes wide, cheeks flushed from the cold. You squeeze inside, nodding to a few familiar faces. Someone hands you a small beeswax candle and you light it from theirs. One flame becomes 2, then 10, then 100. The whole church glows. This isn't just a service, it's warmth made visible. The priest steps forward, his breath a faint cloud in the cold air. God's fire, he says softly, burns even in the darkest winter. You can't help but smile at the irony. You know the real fire you rely on is the one at home, but his words still comfort you. Maybe faith is just another kind of heat. Historians still debate how much religion shaped peasant life during the harshest winters. Some believe church festivals were essential survival tools, giving people light, song and structure in a time when the world seemed dead. Others argue that faith was less about belief and more about community. Either way, you feel it here. The way people gather close, voices rising together in a single breath. You join in the hymn, the Latin words awkward on your tongue but strangely beautiful. The sound fills the space, echoing up into the rafters, mingling with candle smoke and whispers. You close your eyes, and for a moment, it feels like the world has stopped shivering. When the singing ends, people linger. No one's eager to step back into the night. Children play near the door, their laughter soft and muffled by woolen scarves. Someone brings out a jug of warm ale. Another breaks a loaf of bread. The priest doesn't stop them, he smiles, maybe realising that a little warmth shared in God's house is holy enough. You sit beside your friend Tom again, sharing a crust of bread dipped in honey. It sticks to your fingers, sweet and golden. Think it's really true, he asks, nodding toward the candles? That these lights keep the darkness away? You glance at him, then at the flickering flames. If you believe it, you say, it's true enough. Outside, the snow begins to fall again, soft and soundless. Someone starts another hymn, this one lighter. Half prayer, half drinking song. The crowd joins in, laughing between verses. You can't help but think that maybe the saints don't mind a good tune. You notice the windows fogging up, tiny beads of moisture where cold meets warmth. You draw a little shape in it with your finger, a sun maybe. It feels childish, but comforting. The priest begins a short blessing for the season, a prayer for good harvests, full bellies and strong fires. You bow your head, not entirely sure whether you believe all of it, but you whisper along anyway, because it feels good, because everyone else is whispering too. Historians still debate the psychological impact of winter rituals like this, how they gave people structure and a sense of control when nature offered none. You don't need a historian to explain it though, you can feel it. That fragile balance between fear and faith, between freezing and believing you won't. When the candles finally start to burn low, people gather them up carefully, carrying the last bits of flame back to their homes. God's light, the priest says as you pass, keep it safe. You step outside, your candle cupped in both hands, and the cold hits instantly. The wind tries to snuff out the flame, but you shield it, walking slowly. Behind you, dozens of tiny lights move through the snow like stars on Earth. By the time you reach your cottage, your fingers are stiff, but the flame is still alive. You hold it to the hearth, touch it to a bundle of dry rushes and watch the fire catch. The room fills with light again, soft, warm, alive. Your mother looks up and smiles. "See," she says, "told you the saints wouldn't forget us." You grin, sitting close to the fire, feeling the warmth return to your face. Outside, the snow keeps falling, blanketing the world in silence. Inside, the flames dance, reflecting in your family's tired but content eyes. Faith might not fill your belly or fix your roof, but tonight it's enough to make the cold seem smaller. And maybe that's what it's for, to remind you that warmth isn't just something you build from wood and fire. Sometimes it's made of hope too. You stretch your hands toward the flames, watching your candle melt slowly beside the hearth. The wax drips and hardens, forming tiny golden rivers on the floor. You think about how fragile the flame was outside, how easy it would have been to lose it. But you didn't. You carried it all the way home. The snow still hasn't stopped, but life doesn't wait for better weather. You've learned that lesson the hard way. Fields lie frozen, the ploughs buried under frost, and the ground's too hard to dig. But that doesn't mean you're idle. In winter, the work just changes shape. You're sitting near the fire now, spinning wool between your fingers. The spindle whirls lazily, the thread winding like magic. Your mother taught you how when you were small, and at first you hated it. Your fingers clumsy, the thread breaking every few minutes, but now it's soothing. The soft rhythm of twist, pull, wind, twist, pull, wind. The wool's warm against your hands, it smells faintly of lanolin, that oily scent of sheep that somehow lingers through every wash. You like it. It smells like the fields, like summer. like the flock that gave it to you. The whole family's working. Your mother's weaving cloth on a small loom near the window. The light's weak, but she doesn't seem to notice. Your father's mending a tool, sharpening the edge of a sickle that won't see another harvest until spring. Even your younger brother's at it, untangling skeins of yarn with exaggerated size. Winter's the time for mending. Everything, clothes, tools, souls, needs repair after the long year. Historians still debate how much leisure medieval peasants really had during winter. Some say they finally rested after months of labour in the fields. Others argue the slow season was filled with different kinds of work. Spinning, weaving, repairing, carving, making. There's truth in both. Rest doesn't mean stillness. It just means shifting gears. You keep spinning, your fingers finding the rhythm again. The fire pops beside you and you can feel its warmth on your cheek. The room's filled with soft sounds, the hiss of the fire, the creak of the loom, the scrape of your father's knife against metal. It's almost peaceful. You glance down at the spindle and smile at your progress. The yarn is uneven, but it's yours. You imagine the finished cloth, maybe part of a new cloak or a blanket for your little sister. You wonder if it'll still smell faintly of sheep when it's done. Probably. You remember last spring, watching the women of the village washing fleece in the river. They laughed the whole time, splashing each other, their hands red from the cold water. You didn't understand how they could laugh through that, but now you do. Winter works the same. It's hard, it's endless, but it keeps you alive in more ways than one. You glance at your mother's loom. She's humming softly, the wooden shuttle sliding back and forth like a heartbeat. The threads tighten, cross, bind, each one holding another together. It's hypnotic. You ever think, she says without looking up, that we spend half our lives making what the cold tries to take from us? You chuckle. Seems fair. It spends its life trying to take what we make, she smirks. Then we'll see who gets tired first. Historians still debate how much spinning and weaving shaped the peasant economy. Wool was England's treasure, after all, the backbone of trade and taxation. Even small villages like yours played a role in that grand economy, every spindle turn feeding a chain that reached kings and merchants. You don't think about that, though. For you, it's simple. Spin or freeze. Your father looks up from his work. You know, he says, when I was a boy, we'd carve spoons in winter. Whole days spent shaving wood by the fire. You grin. How many spoons does one man need? He shrugs. Depends on how many he breaks. Then he tosses a small lump of wood your way. Go on, see if you've got the hands for it. You catch it clumsily and pick up his knife. The wood's pale and cold to the touch. You scrape at it, carving the rough shape of a bowl. It's harder than it looks. A sliver flies off and nearly lands in the fire. Your brother laughs so hard he nearly drops his yarn. Careful, your father says, grinning. You're aiming for a spoon, not a toothpick. For a few minutes, the whole house echoes with laughter. It feels good. Real, full, alive. Outside, the wind howls, but inside, there's only warmth and work and the steady rhythm of hands creating. By afternoon, the air in the cottage smells of wool and smoke. Your fingers ache, but you keep spinning. Each thread is a promise to spring, to the day when the sun returns, when the fields wake up again, when your work will turn into something soft and useful. You look out the window for a moment. The snow's falling again, slow and steady. You can see the faint outline of your neighbour's house through the white blur. There's smoke rising from their chimney too. You picture them doing the same thing, mending, spinning, waiting. You wonder if every hearth in the village hums with the same quiet determination tonight. As evening settles in, your mother gathers the wool into neat bundles, tying them with string. Tomorrow, she says, we'll dye it. Maybe brown, maybe blue if there's enough woad left. You nod, already picturing it. Can we make it green, you ask? She laughs softly. Green's for lords. You'll wear brown and like it. You smile. Brown's the colour of warmth anyway. When the last of the daylight fades, you set your spindle aside and stretch your arms. The firelight paints everyone in shades of gold and shadow. The tools gleam, the wool glows softly, and for the first time in days, the cottage feels less like a shelter and more like a workshop for hope. You realise then that warmth isn't just a fire. It's movement, it's making, it's purpose. The cold can take your crops, your comfort, even your fingers if you're careless, but it can't take your work. You settle near the fire again, half dozing, the spindle still in your lap. Your mother's humming returns, and your father's knife scrapes softly against wood. You close your eyes, the smell of wool filling your lungs, and you think, yes, this is how you beat winter. One thread, one tool, one breath at a time. You wake to a cough. Not your own this time, your grandmother's. Deep, rattling, the kind that comes from breathing too much smoke and not enough air. You glance over and see her sitting up by the hearth, a shawl over her head, muttering something about how the cold gets into your bones and never leaves. You stretch, your joints stiff, and shuffle over to the fire. It's still burning low, a thin glow under a crust of ash. You grab the poker and stir until sparks rise again. The room smells of smoke and boiled wool. "Don't let it go out," she rasps. "Bad luck, that." You nod. Bad luck or not, it's also miserable. You drop another log, one of the precious few, onto the embers. The fire sighs in relief, the flames licking upward like they missed you. Your father's still asleep, your mother's snoring softly, but your grandmother's wide awake. She eyes you and says, "Fetch me the onions." You frown. "For breakfast?" She shakes her head. "For this." She taps her chest and coughs again. You know what's coming. One of her remedies. You sigh but fetch the onions anyway. She takes them, chops them roughly, and drops them into a clay pot. Then she adds a splash of ale, a bit of honey, and, of course, a muttered prayer to St. Blaise, patron of throats and all things that make people gag. "Now," she says, "warm it by the fire, then breathe it in." Clears the chest, drives out the cold. You do as she says, though you can't help wrinkling your nose at the smell. When the steam hits your face, your eyes water instantly. "Feels like it's driving out my soul," you mutter, coughing. She chuckles, a harsh, dry sound. Means it's working. Historians still debate how effective medieval warming remedies really were. Some were based on genuine herbal knowledge, like onion poultices or mustard plasters, while others drifted deep into superstition. But to the people who lived it, healing and faith weren't separate things. They were two hands of the same prayer. You glance around the cottage. Dried herbs hang from the rafters. Sage, thyme, garlic, and something that looks suspiciously like old moss. Your mother collects them all year for moments like this. "Everything in the woods has its purpose," she says. "If it doesn't feed you, it heals you, or kills you if you're foolish." You remember one winter when the whole village came down with a fever? The air smelled like boiled onions for weeks. Someone swore by rubbing goose fat on their chest. Another buried hot stones under their blankets. The priest even sprinkled holy water in people's shoes to chase out the cold spirits. You tried it once. It mostly just made your feet wet. "Don't laugh," your grandmother says now, catching your smirk. "The old ways work." She gestures to the corner where a horseshoe hangs above the door. That keeps the frost demons out. "Does it?" you ask. She shrugs. "Maybe, but have you seen any frost demons?" You can't argue with that logic. She leans back, eyes half closed, breathing in the onion steam. The light from the fire paints her face in flickers, every wrinkle deep like a map of winters survived. You realise she's been through more of them than you can count, and somehow she's still here. Maybe that's proof enough her strange ways work. You turn toward the shelf where your mother keeps other cures. There's a jar of lard, a pot of honey, a pouch of something labelled warming dust, which you're fairly sure is just ground pepper, and a little bundle tied with red string. "What's that one for?" you ask. "Night chills," your grandmother says. "Keep it under your pillow, or eat it if you're desperate." You blink. "What's in it?" "Better not to know." You decide not to ask again. Historians still debate where the line between medicine and magic truly was in the Middle Ages. The two overlapped constantly. A poultice might be blessed before use. A herb might be boiled in holy water. A charm might be recited alongside a recipe. To you, it just feels like covering all your bases. Later that day, you visit the village healer, a thin woman with sharp eyes and hands that smell permanently of garlic and smoke. She's stirring something in a pot when you arrive. "Got the cough again?" she says without looking up. "Half the village does." You nod, explaining your grandmother's remedies. She snorts. "Onions, ha! Better than dung, I suppose." "Dung?" "Cow dung," she says matter-of-factly. "Spread warm on the chest, keeps the heat in." You stare at her. "You've tried that?" "Of course not," she says, smirking. "That's for fools," she pauses. "I use goose fat." You can't tell if she's joking. She hands you a small pouch of dried leaves. Mallow and horehound, boil them, drink the water. Tastes like boiled hay, but it works. You thank her and leave, clutching the pouch like treasure. Outside, the air feels sharper, but you can almost convince yourself you feel warmer already. Maybe it's the herbs. Maybe it's the thought of doing something, anything, to fight back. That night, the cottage smells like every cure known to mankind. Onions, garlic, herbs, smoke, and a faint whiff of something burning that may or may not be your father's sock. You're all laughing, coughing, sneezing, alive in a haze of half faith and half science. And for once, the laughter doesn't fade when the fire does. You look at your grandmother, eyes shining in the dim light. You think we'll ever find something that really works, you ask? She smiles faintly. We already did. We keep living. You sit back, letting the warmth and the smell of herbs wrap around you like a blanket. The fire crackles. The world outside stays cold and cruel, but here, between superstition, steam and stubbornness, you're holding your own. Maybe warmth doesn't always come from fire. Sometimes it comes from faith, laughter, and the smell of onions that won't leave your clothes for a week. You wake before dawn to the sound of horses, hooves crunching on frozen mud, the jangle of harness bells, and voices that don't belong to peasants. You push aside the rough curtain hanging near your sleeping corner and peer outside. Torches, fine cloaks, iron gleam. The Lord's men? You groan. That means one thing. Someone's being summoned to the manor. Usually for taxes, sometimes for work, occasionally for punishment. But every visit means the same thing. The gap between your world and theirs feels enormous. By the time the sun peeks over the trees, the snow outside has turned to a slush of footprints and hoofprints leading up toward the big house on the hill. The manor looms there, its stone walls pale against the winter sky. You've seen it from afar all your life, but up close it always seems unreal, like a castle that sprouted in the middle of your muddy village. You tighten your cloak and start up the hill, the wind nipping at your ears. When you reach the gates, a guard gives you a quick look and waves you through. You smell smoke. Clean, rich wood smoke, not the smoky muck of dung fires. It smells expensive. Inside, the manor hall glows, great tapestries hang from the walls, each one thick enough to stop a draught on its own. The floor is stone, but rushes cover it in neat, even layers. Fresh, fragrant, sprinkled with herbs to mask the smells of men and dogs. You look down at your boots, caked with mud, and suddenly feel like you're tracking filth across paradise. The hearth dominates the room, a giant stone fireplace big enough to roast a whole cow. The fire roars, logs the size of tree trunks crackling like thunder. The heat hits your face so hard it almost stings. You blink, realizing you can actually feel sweat forming under your layers. Sweat. In January. Historians still debate how much warmer manor houses truly were than peasant cottages. Some argue that even nobles suffered from the cold, their vast halls impossible to heat evenly. Others suggest the wealthiest lords had comfort unknown to commoners. Massive fires, tapestries, and servants constantly tending to the flames. Standing here, you don't need a historian. You can feel the difference in your bones. You watch as servants move briskly about, laying platters on the long table. Meat, steaming bread, flagons of ale. You swallow hard, eyes fixed on a roasted bird dripping with fat. You can smell the rosemary, the garlic, the salt. Real salt, glinting white as snow. The lord himself sits near the fire, wrapped in a fur-lined mantle that probably costs more than your entire house. He glances at you briefly, his face half lit by the flames. "So," he says, "you're the one who brought the wool." You nod quickly, clutching the small bundle in your hands. It's rough spun but strong, a month's worth of spinning. The steward inspects it, nods once, and tosses you a few coins. They clink in your palm, cold and small. Enough for grain, maybe a bit of salt. "Keep your hands busy this winter," the lord says absently, turning back to the fire. The cold spares no one idle. You bow, mutter thanks, and back away. As you leave, you catch sight of the lady of the house, her gown trailing across the rushes like liquid velvet. A small dog, white and clean, rests at her feet near the fire. You think of your own dog back home, who sleeps in ashes to stay warm. Two creatures of the same kind living in different worlds. On your way out, you pause near the hearth again, letting the heat soak into your skin one last time. You close your eyes and sigh. It's almost too much, like standing too close to the sun. Then you hear the servants whispering. "The wood's burning too fast," one says. "We'll need another cartload by tomorrow." You nearly laugh. One night's comfort for them would heat your cottage for a month. When you step outside, the cold feels crueler than ever. The wind slices through your cloak, reminding you exactly where you belong. Still, your hands feel warm from the memory of that fire, and you hold on to it as you walk home. Historians still debate the relationship between peasants and their lords, how resentment and dependence existed side by side. You think about it as you trudge back down the hill. You hate how easy their warmth looks, but part of you also feels grateful that some of it trickles down. After all, those coins in your hand will buy food, maybe even another blanket. When you reach your cottage, you push open the door, and the smoky heat hits you again. Rough, uneven, real. The fire's smaller, the walls cracked, the air thick with the smell of dung and wool, but somehow it feels like home. Your mother looks up from the hearth. "Well?" she asks. You toss her the coins. "Enough for a few days," you say. She nods, then gestures to the fire. "Good. Then help me turn this wood before it burns through." You kneel beside her, feeding the small flames, your fingers numb again. The memory of the manor's roaring hearth fades with every minute, replaced by the softer, truer glow of this one. You glance around at the faces in the dim light. Your father mending his boots, your brother stirring a pot, your grandmother humming in her chair. The heat is uneven, the smoke makes your eyes sting, but somehow this feels more alive than that great silent hall ever did. You think about the Lord's fire. Perfect, huge and hollow, and realise something. Warmth isn't measured by size or wealth, it's measured by who shares it. Your mother passes you a cup of hot ale, her hand brushing yours. You take a sip, the taste simple and sharp, and the fire crackles. Somewhere outside you can hear the wind whining around the corners of the house. Frustrated it can't come in. You smile faintly, eyes fixed on the flames. "Let the lords keep their roaring fires," you whisper. "Ours sings better." The wind came early that year, scraping across the fields like a blade. It tore at the thatch, howled through the trees, and froze the streams solid before anyone was ready. You remember that sound, the moan of the wind like a hungry thing, and the way people's faces changed when they realised this winter was different. The famine winter, they called it later. Though you didn't need a name for it then, you just needed food and fire. It started small. The first frost came too soon, killing the late barley and turning the cabbage fields to stone. The sheep huddled together, thin and shivering, and the hens stopped laying. The ground was too hard to dig, and even the well water turned to ice. You'd knock at the bucket with a stick every morning, and it would ring like iron. Historians still debate how frequent those famine winters really were. Records from the 14th century tell of great frosts that stretched for months, killing crops, livestock, and people alike. But whether it was every few decades or every few years, the fear never left. Every autumn you could feel people bracing themselves, watching the sky, tasting the air, waiting to see what kind of winter it would be. This one, it was merciless. You remember waking to silence, the kind that comes when even the birds give up. The world outside your cottage was white and dead. You'd pull your cloak tighter, but the air found its way in anyway. Every draught, every crack in the wall became an enemy. You spent your days rationing wood, food, even words. Talking too much felt like wasting breath you might need later. Your family burned everything they could find. Old stools, a broken gate, even a wagon wheel someone dragged back from the manor's refuse pile. The smell of burning oak was sweet, almost nostalgic. The smell of burning dung was not, but you didn't have the luxury of caring. Sometimes you go to the forest, risking the Lord's anger to gather sticks. The snow came up to your knees, and your fingers would go numb before you made it halfway back. You'd drop one branch, curse, pick it up, drop another. By the time you got home, your cloak would be crusted with ice. And yet you weren't alone. No one was. The village pulled together in those months. The alehouse stopped charging coin for broth. The smith's wife shared her last onions with the widow next door. Every night the whole village gathered by whichever fire burned brightest, taking turns feeding it, guarding it like a newborn child. One night you remember sitting with Tom and the others, your faces all hollowed by hunger and the flicker of flame. The pot on the fire held more water than stew. You stirred it anyway, pretending it might thicken if you wished hard enough. "Historians still debate whether hope can boil soup," Tom muttered, his grin weak but defiant. You nearly choked laughing. That's how you survived, jokes in the dark. The worst of it came in late January. The snow piled so high you couldn't open the door. The wind shrieked like something alive. You'd wake up at night and listen to it trying to claw its way inside. You wondered sometimes if it would win. One morning you woke to find the fire out. Just grey ash. Your breath hung in the air, frozen mid-word. For a long moment no one moved. Then your grandmother sat up, wrapped in 3 blankets, and said, "Not today." She dug into the ashes, found one tiny spark hiding under the grey, and breathed on it gently, whispering words you couldn't quite hear. Slowly it glowed, then flared. You all stared, silent, as the flames came back. You didn't speak for a long time after that. You didn't need to. The fire said everything. Historians still debate whether the Little Ice Age was as catastrophic as the old records make it sound. But standing there, hands outstretched to the flickering light, you don't need charts or data. You just know it felt like the end of the world, and somehow it wasn't. The thaw came late that year, in March. The first drip of meltwater sounded like music. You remember the day the snow cracked and slid off the roof in heavy chunks? The air suddenly alive again with the smell of mud and rot. It was beautiful. That night, your family ate real food for the first time in weeks. Barley bread, a scrap of salted pork, and a handful of dried apples. The fire burned bright, almost too bright, and you sat so close your skin prickled. Your mother smiled faintly, saying nothing. You knew she was counting every face in the firelight, silently marking who'd made it through. Later, when the others slept, you sat awake watching the embers. You thought of the cold nights, the empty bowls, the jokes you told to keep from crying. You thought of how small your world had been, shrinking to a single room, a single flame. And yet, you'd made it. You realised something then, that warmth is not just heat, it's a kind of stubbornness, a refusal. The cold wants to take everything and you tell it no. You don't even need to shout it. You just keep breathing, keep feeding the fire, keep laughing at your own misery. You smile at the memory now, that laugh in the dark, that was your real fire. The snow outside your door may have melted, but you still carry a little of that winter inside you. A reminder that survival isn't about never freezing, it's about never giving in. The thaw comes quietly, first as a sound, a soft drip from the eaves, a faint crack where ice breaks on the stream. Then the smell changes. The air, though still cold, carries the scent of wet earth and old grass. You can feel it in your lungs like something waking up after a long sleep. You step outside, blinking against the grey light. The snow has sunk into itself, slumping in uneven piles like tired giants. Patches of brown ground peek through, muddy, slick, alive. The wind is softer now, the kind that nips instead of bites. You can almost believe spring's on its way. Your boots sink into the melting slush as you walk toward the field. It's still barren, but you can see the faintest hint of green poking through near the fence. A weed, maybe, but you'll take it. After months of white, even weeds look like a miracle. Behind you, the cottage door creaks open. "Don't wander too far," your mother calls. "There's work to do," you grin. Work. You've missed that word. Inside, the air is different too. The fire still burns, but not with the same desperation. You can feel the walls drying, the dampness fading. Your grandmother sits by the door, humming softly, her feet stretched toward the warmth. The smell of thawing earth mixes with smoke. It's not pleasant, but it's home. Historians still debate when exactly the agricultural spring season began for peasants, since it depended on geography and luck. But you know what it means in practice: digging, mending, planting, life creeping back into motion after being frozen still. You fetch the tools, still dull from months of disuse. The iron's rusted at the edges, the wooden handles cracked. Your father joins you, sharpening a spade on a flat stone. The scrape of metal on stone feels like music. "Time to wake the soil," he says. You head outside together, boots squelching in the mud. The ground's stubborn, it remembers the cold, but with each strike of the spade you loosen a little more. Earth gives way, dark and wet, smelling rich. You breathe it in deeply, it's the scent of beginning. The whole village stirs the same way. You hear distant voices, laughter, even a song. The alehouse door's propped open to let in air for the first time in months. You can see smoke curling lazily instead of billowing, the fire's finally tamed. You pass the byre, where the animals move sluggishly in the muck. The cow's coat is shedding its winter thickness, clumps of fur clinging to the posts. You scratch behind her ear and she huffs, warm and content. Even the chickens look happier, half-starved but alive, clucking like gossipers. You remember how they all huddled together with you through the winter? The sound of their breathing mixed with yours. It's strange. When the cold was at its worst, the animals didn't feel like beasts. They were just more bodies, more warmth. Now, as you watch them return to their routines, it feels like saying goodbye to fellow survivors. Later, when you head back inside, your mother's pulling out the last of the preserved food from the cellar. A few onions, some dried beans, a hard piece of cheese that might fight back if you try to cut it. "Soon we'll have greens again," she says wistfully. "Fresh ones." You grin. "You mean weeds?" She smirks. "Weeds are food when you cook them right." The thought of anything fresh feels absurdly luxurious. You picture tender shoots and green herbs growing in the ditches. You promise yourself you'll never complain about cabbage again. Historians still debate how quickly medieval diets shifted from winter to spring foods. Some accounts describe a hunger gap, the lean weeks before new crops could be harvested. You know that time well, when the cellars are nearly bare, but the fields aren't ready yet. The body wakes before the land does, and the waiting feels endless. Still, even hunger feels different now. The air hums with potential. You can feel it in your bones. The cold isn't gone, but it's losing its grip. That night you sit outside for the first time since autumn. The ground's damp, but you don't care. The sky's clear, stars scattered across it like spilled salt. You can hear water dripping somewhere nearby, rhythmic and steady, the sound of melting. You close your eyes and just listen. Your friend Tom joins you, dropping onto the log beside you. "Remember when the well froze?" he says. "Thought we'd never see water again." You chuckle. "Now I can't stop stepping in it." He grins, teeth flashing in the dark. "Think we'll get a good harvest this year?" You shrug. "We always think that." "Still gotta hope." You nod. Hope is its own kind of warmth, you think. It keeps returning even when you tell it not to. As the night deepens, a breeze carries the faint scent of wet grass and ash. Somewhere, an owl hoots. The world isn't loud yet, it's still half asleep, but it's breathing again. You stretch your legs, lean back against the rough wall of the cottage and sigh. The stars shimmer, reflected faintly in the puddles at your feet. You think of all the nights you stared into the fire, wishing for this, for the world to thaw, for the air to move, for life to feel possible again. Now that it's here, it doesn't come with fanfare. No trumpets, no sudden warmth, just slow, careful breath, a whisper instead of a roar. You turn to Tom. "We made it." He nods quiet. "Aye, we did." The fire inside the cottage pops once, a spark escaping into the cool air. You watch it drift upward, vanish into the dark, and for a brief moment you feel weightless. The cold might come again next year, it always does. But tonight the earth's alive beneath your feet, and so are you. Spring is no longer a promise. It's here, soft and cautious, tiptoeing across the land like someone afraid to wake a sleeping giant. The air is damp and sweet, and for the first time in months the birds sing before dawn. You wake to their sound, half disbelieving. The long silence of winter has ended. You stretch, the straw rustling beneath you, and for once the cold doesn't bite when you throw off your blanket. The hearth is quiet, just a few pale coals glowing faintly, but that's fine. You don't need it roaring anymore. You can feel warmth in the air itself. When you open the door, sunlight spills in like liquid gold. The world outside isn't beautiful yet, not really. It's muddy and grey, the ground still bruised from frost. But there's movement everywhere. Water trickles in the ditches. Tiny shoots push through the muck, defiant and green. The world feels alive, and that's enough. You step outside barefoot, letting your toes sink into the cold, wet earth. It's a shock at first, but then comfort. Familiar. The ground that froze beneath you all winter is soft again, pliant. You smile, looking out over the fields, remembering how they used to be nothing but white emptiness. Now they're full of promise. Your mother's already up, tying her hair with a strip of linen as she steps into the light. "Get the spade," she says, and there's no complaint in her voice this time. You grab it without hesitation. Work feels different now. It isn't a burden. It's a renewal. The soil resists at first, but then it gives. Dark and rich beneath the surface. The smell of it rises, earthy, sharp, alive. You breathe it in like a prayer. Your father joins you, hand steady as he breaks apart the clods. "Feels strange," he murmurs. "After so long digging through snow." You grin. "Better this kind of digging." He laughs, and the sound carries through the still air. Historians still debate whether medieval peasants celebrated the arrival of spring in grand ways or small ones. Some say there were rituals, bonfires, feast days, offerings to saints for a good growing season. Others believe it was simpler, a quiet joy, a shared glance at the thawing fields, a deep breath of gratitude. Standing here, sweat already beading on your brow, you understand it's both. Work is the celebration. By midday the sun is high, the sky impossibly blue. The village buzzes with life again. People mend fences, patch roofs, lead animals to pasture. The alehouse doors wide open, the laughter spilling out like light. Children chase each other through puddles, their shrieks echoing off the damp walls. Even the dogs bark differently, hopeful. You stop to rest, sitting on a patch of grass that wasn't there a week ago. The ground is still cool, but not cruel. You look up at the sky, shading your eyes, and you think of everything the winter tried to take, and everything it couldn't. You remember the hunger, the frozen water, the fires that smoked more than they warmed. You remember your grandmother's cough, your father's cracked hands, your mother's quiet prayers. But you also remember the laughter in the alehouse, the glow of candles in the church, the hum of spinning wheels, and the taste of onion broth that somehow felt like a feast. Historians still debate what resilience really meant for medieval peasants, whether it was faith, endurance, or just stubbornness. You think maybe it's all three. Resilience is lighting a fire in a world made of ice and saying, "No, I'm not done yet." As the day wears on, you hear singing from somewhere down the lane. A handful of villagers, carrying baskets heading toward the meadow. "St. Walpurga's Day," someone calls. "First to the green!" You follow them, curious. They gather wild herbs, tying them into little bundles, charms against sickness, tokens of spring. Someone hands you one, woven with thyme and early nettles. "Hang it by the door," they tell you. "Keeps the cold from coming back too soon." You laugh softly. "Does it work?" The woman shrugs, smiling. "Work so far." You tuck it into your belt, the scent sharp and clean. For the first time in months, the air doesn't sting your nose. It fills your lungs. That night, back at the cottage, the family gathers for supper. It's simple as always, bread, broth, a few early greens, but it tastes like something new. The fire burns low, lazy, a companion rather than a lifeline. The room glows softly in the twilight, and your grandmother hums a tune that sounds half lullaby, half prayer. You glance around the table, at faces worn but smiling, and you realise that warmth, real warmth, has nothing to do with fire at all. It's this: shared food, shared work, shared breath, the heat of being together. You step outside once more before bed. The night is quiet, the air cool but kind. The stars shimmer above, reflected faintly in the puddles near your feet. Somewhere, far off, a stream gurgles over stones, its voice like laughter. You close your eyes and breathe. The cold will come again, next year or the year after, and you'll curse it, and fight it, and survive it, just like every peasant before you. But tonight the world is soft. The earth is warm beneath your feet. The fire sleeps behind you, and for once you don't need to feed it. You smile into the dark. "We made it," you whisper again. The wind answers, gentle and low, carrying the scent of thawed earth and smoke, the smell of survival.